Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 195. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. If you're brand new here, welcome. My name is Tess. I am the host of this show, founder of Wander Wealthy, and business coach for all the money, wealth, financial coaches of the world. And this week, I'm sharing with you my secret weapon for business growth, which, spoiler alert, is your money coaching framework. Now, if that doesn't make sense, don't worry, because we're going to dig into it and talk all about how to identify your framework, get that in place, and know how to use it and how it's going to change the game for you when it comes to selling, marketing, and even delivering your coaching. So before we dive in, of course, to this week's episode, we want to share with you the sponsor of this show, and that is the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. So exciting because we are just 4 days away from opening enrollment for the next round of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint, which is going to kick off January of 2021. But enrollment starts November 30th and goes all the way until December 22nd. And in that time, I am opening up my calendar to get on a one-on-one strategy session with each and every one of you if you are considering the Wealthy Coach Blueprint as the next program, the container to really hold you accountable and follow through with the steps that I have really tried and tested to build your successful, booked out money coaching business. Then this is your opportunity. So go to wanderwealthy.com/apply. And depending on when you're listening to this episode, you will either, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can of course read through it, learn all the details about the blueprint. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there will be a button there, and it will either be to jump on the wait list so that you can be one of the first to know when my calendar opens up and you can book our strategy session together. Or maybe you will be hit with the opportunity to just book the strategy session. So either way, head to wanderwealthy.com/apply and you'll be prompted with the next step. And just a reminder, this strategy session is absolutely zero strings attached. I don't require any sort of upfront investment or commitment. This is really just an opportunity for us to jump on the phone and see if the blueprint is really going to be the best fit for you. And if I am going to be that mentor for you to carry you forward and work with you so that we can co-create a life-changing coaching program that you're going to then be able to seamlessly and effortlessly sell to your ideal clients and really start seeing those clients come in the door, deliver them an unforgettable experience, and see your business start to get its wings and take off. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. On that call, we will answer all of your questions if there are any, and just have a really good conversation at the minimum. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. All right. Let's talk about frameworks, about the one thing that entirely changed my business, because implementing a framework into how I marketed, how I sold, and how I delivered my coaching program, it changed everything. And I wish I would have known this years before, because it would have made selling my coaching services so much easier. It would have helped me understand, okay, what comes next when I was working with a client. And it just would have actually felt like I had created something that was my own that now I was the owner of. It would have maybe even made me feel like, okay, my business, it's more legitimate because I have this framework. So before I explain what a framework is more specifically and tangibly, and before we talk about how you can build your own framework, I want to ask you a question. And I really just want you to think to yourself, what is more compelling? So let's say you are hiring me as your money coach, and we're sitting here on a sales call and having this discussion about what it looks like to work with me, okay? So on one hand, I could say, All right, when you invest to work with me, you'll get 6-hour-long money coaching sessions where we'll work on your finances, and you'll get some homework probably to do between the sessions, and we'll just make sure that you're making progress in these 6 sessions towards your money goals. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end is, all right, when you invest to work with me, you'll get access to my 6-step money makers method, which comes with the education you need to uncover your money-making magic. You'll get homework within each step, which I'll provide you with real-time feedback on how to make sure you're making progress through the program. And you'll get 6 corresponding one-on-one coaching sessions with me where I can support you with any hangups, help you stay accountable, and work with you on a deeper level to help you get out of your own way and make sure that you're bringing in the excess income that'll help you make real progress towards your financial goals. Okay, other than the fact that I said a lot more words in the second part, which isn't necessarily better, right? We want to try to keep it brief. But other than the fact that I did put a little bit more words in the second part, what really cements it in as just making it appear more valuable, because technically both of these versions could contain the same thing, but also the way that I worded the second one, it elevates the value because I share with you the fact that I have this 6-step money makers method. I have this framework that you're going to step through. And not only that, but you're also going to get the homework that goes along with each step, right? And you can start to understand those steps if you had to, right? Let's not forget, I'm the money coach here, you're the customer. So if I had to, I could go into a couple of those 6 steps just to explain how they're going to individually benefit you. But without even having to do that, you can already interpret the value I'm bringing to our work together that is above and beyond the fact that you're just buying 6 hours of my time, because that's not it at all. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of money coaches make, is selling their time and really thinking about just selling on a per session basis versus having this framework that they're going to take their clients through. And then everything else is kind of bonus. Those 6 additional sessions, those are just the bonus ones. I didn't even really talk about them until halfway through my little pitch there. So because I've added in this framework, it helps me frame what it's really going to look like, the fact that there's a step-by-step sequential process, and it gives you as the customer this value, additional view of the value that you're going to get from working together. You know that if you accomplish those 6 steps, you're going to be making more money. You know that there's going to be homework along the way. You know that I'm going to hold you accountable, and there's going to be those additional one-on-one sessions where we're going to be working together. And you'll notice I also didn't even talk about hourly sessions. I kept it focused on the fact that we're going to get to chat one-on-one 6 times to support each of the steps of the framework. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be an hour. It can simply be just, 20 minutes to make sure that I'm helping you get out of your own way. Okay, so that is how you really want to be thinking about your money coaching, and the value that you provide is start with the framework. And so getting back to kind of what is a framework is really, I feel like it could be defined in so many different ways, and I'm just going to define it in my own words. It's really a process or a system. You could call it a framework straight out of the gate if you wanted to. My framework is the 8-phase blueprint that I take you through to build your booked out coaching business. That is my framework. It's an 8-phase blueprint, but for anyone, it could be, you could call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, it's a step-by-step process that if your client can conquer step 1, they'll be well on their way to step 2. If they can conquer step 2, they'll be well on their way to step 3. However many steps it takes for them to get from where they're currently at to where they want to be. What is the end goal, and how are they going to get there? They're going to get there by taking these specific steps. Once you have identified that, right, a lot of what we do inside of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint is validating the niche market, really identifying what is it that they want, utilizing the research that we do within our niche market and the conversations we have to identify what's getting in the way from where they're currently at to where they want to go, but also using our own experience and expertise and understanding, maybe what got in our way. A lot of times you're the most evolved version of your ideal client. So a lot of times you might have personal experience about what worked or what didn't work for you so that you can then help it be less painful for your ideal clients as they're working through that journey. But really, it's a co-creation process to identify these step-by-step pieces that go into your framework. And once you get that, then you have your framework, right? It's kind of like when you're writing a research paper and you need to put together the outline first. The outline is your framework. Okay, another example is any book. Well, most books have a table of contents. The table of contents usually gives you the chapter by chapter steps of taking you from where you are at or where the character is at the start of the book, all the way to where you ultimately want to be or where the character is going to end up at the end of the book. If you think about your program, your coaching, the work that you do, if you think about the fact that the work that you do for your clients is taking them through a transformation, a lot of it, we've talked about this a lot recently, a lot of what you're doing as a coach is behavioral change and helping them get from point A to point B. That is a story that you're helping them write. And if you think about a story, the stories have chapters. Those chapters are different steps that they need to take to get from where they're starting from to where they want to go. That is your framework. And when you can distill it down, it will help you know the steps that you need to be making sure that your clients are going through as you work with them, which makes coaching so much easier. But it also helps you put a name on the work that you're doing and the process that you've created because you know it is uniquely suitable to your ideal clients. And that helps from a marketing standpoint, but it also helps in the sales process because you can introduce your ideal client to this framework that you know is, again, uniquely suited for them because it aligns with their lifestyle and with who they are and with where they want to go. And when you're in the process of selling, then you can easily pinpoint what of their problems, their struggles, where you're going to be able to help them overcome that in your framework, right? You can be like, oh, that's chapter 4 where we talk about identifying our unique expertise so that we can learn all the different ways that we could potentially make money, right? You can easily pinpoint that while you're in the sales process. That easily helps your ideal client see how you specifically can help them and just resonates with them on such a deeper level because you're able to pinpoint the current struggles that they have and tell them exactly when and at what point, at what of those 6 sessions you're going to get to that answer. You're going to get to solving that particular problem. And it almost helps them process any potential objections they might have, right? In the back of their mind, they could be thinking, well, how do I really know she's going to be able to help me? And when you are able to then pull out of your framework the various steps where you're going to address some of their biggest struggles or maybe a big goal that they have, that cements it even further in, right? And then above and beyond that, going back to the marketing piece, when you can have a framework that you've created specifically for this ideal niche of clients that you want to work with, and then you put a name to it, it naturally elevates the perceived value of your coaching, right? No longer are they just buying your time but have no idea what's going to come in those 6 sessions. Now they know that they're also going to be getting this 6-step moneymakers method, that there's a unique process you're going to take them through, and that the calls are really just supplementary support that they might need to tap into while they're working through this process. So that's a little bit of a explainer, if you will, of what a framework is and how it truly helps you elevate the value of the work that you're going to be doing together. And this is truly from a marketing perspective, because at the end of the day, if you don't put a name on the steps you take your clients through and you just sell 6 one-on-one hour-long coaching sessions, there's still so much value in that, but it's hard for your ideal client to truly understand what they're buying. So when you put a name on the framework of the process you're going to take them through in those 6 sessions, that really helps cement in the value. Now they know that they're buying a process, they're not just buying your time. So it elevates that value. It helps you sell because now you don't have to memorize every single individual piece of material that you're going to be taking your clients through, but you can know what the names of the chapters are in the book, right? You can know those steps of the framework that you're going to take your clients through, and it makes it super easy to refer back to then when you go into a sales call and you're talking to a client and you really want to personalize how this framework, how your coaching package is going to work suitably and specifically for them. And then, of course, when it comes to the delivery part, there's just so much value in having a framework to lean on when you're working with a client, because then you always know what step of the process they're on, where they may need a little bit support if they're falling behind, and you'll always know what are we going to be talking about in our next session. If you're like me, because I used to just sell sessions. I used to just sell my time because I didn't know. And it's totally understandable. It's not like we all know what the best coaching program looks like out there. And so we just make it up as we go. And that's what I did when I really first started coaching, is I just kind of thought, okay, well, it looks like what other people are offering are 6 one-on-one hourly sessions. So that's what I'm going to offer. And that's what I started with, because I had no idea what appropriate coaching looked like and how I could make it appear more valuable and actually be more valuable by implementing a framework. So I just offered 6 calls, and then I would do the most on that very first call. And then I would always get anxiety about the next calls because I'd be like, well, what are we going to talk about? And of course, I can tell you this from personal experience, and maybe you know how this feels now, but you get on the second call and it's all good. You have plenty to talk about. And then you get worried about the third call, but then you get on the third call and it's fine. You have plenty to talk about, and so on and so forth. It happens like that because we get in our head about all the stuff that we should be talking about at certain points in time, or maybe we give a little bit too much, which can hurt us at points. Not only hurt you from giving it all away in the first call, but also potentially that could overwhelm your ideal client. I talked about that in the Less is More episode recently, so go check that out if you haven't checked it out. But what a framework helps you do is really helps you pace yourself and pace your client so that they're not drinking out of a fire hose while working with you either. So there's so much benefit to having a specific framework in place above and beyond just that it sounds cool that now you're the founder of the 6-step moneymakers method. Am I right? So if you're on board, if you're ready to put your framework and create your framework and then put it into action, here is how you build your framework. I have 3 simple steps that'll get you through this. Step number 1 is you gotta know your ideal client profile and really know what they want to achieve. And typically it's better to know what tangibly they want to achieve. So intangible goals, intangible achievements are going to be like, I just want to feel more confident with my finances, or I just want to be able to have everything organized. There's some tangibility in there, but it's really hard to track and measure, and it just generally resonates at a less of a strength than pulling out tangible, specific goals, like paying off debt, or like having $5,000 in a savings account, or like being on track to retire by the age of 50, right? You can really pinpoint specific goals. And I know that can be scary because as money coaches, we can't make any guarantees, but I guarantee you that if you know what your ideal client wants to achieve, and then you identify the framework that's going to best get them there, then by the time they are finished working with you, if they haven't reached their $5,000 in a savings account goal or whatever their specific goal is, at the very least, they will have the tools and the understanding and have made the behavioral change that will way more likely get them to their goal than where they were at before they started working with you. So you can't get all wrapped up in, if I talk about this end goal as if I'm going to guarantee it, then I have to guarantee it. Because first and foremost, you shouldn't guarantee anything because money is one of the most unpredictable worlds that we live in. And so much of their results are going to come from them, right? You can only do so much as a coach. The results really have to come from them. And so what you can guarantee is helping them change their behavior and giving them the tools and the understanding that can get them there. You can't just guarantee that you're going to get them there. But step number one is to know your ideal client profile so in-depthly that you know specifically what those tangible goals are that they want to achieve, okay? Step number two is to define the steps that they need to take in order to get from where they're currently at to where they want to be. So where they're currently at is going to be point A, and where they want to be, what that tangible end goal is going to be point B. And so what you can do, and what I like to do, is actually work backwards. So I'll go to point B. Let's use the example of have $5,000 in savings. And I will work backwards and go, okay, what's the last thing that they need to have in place so that they can seamlessly reach that $5,000 in savings? And if I had to think about it, I would probably think they probably have to start automating things, right? I don't really like to automate things right away with my clients because it's a little bit too much of a shock for them. And I'm thinking specifically about my ideal clients, right? So you would want to think specifically about what would be suitable for your ideal clients. And also, because I too am just the evolved version of my ideal client, I also know what worked for me. And when I started automating things right away, it just didn't work for me because it was like swinging too hard to the other side, and I wanted to have a little bit more control during the process. So automating was something that I didn't really implement until right before I just had everything on autopilot, and that was great. But I knew that I needed to change my behaviors before I could just set things up on autopilot. So personally, and for my ideal clients, if I had to take a step back, I would be like, okay, automating would be the second to last step. The last step would be have $5,000 extra in the savings account. Last step, because we don't know how many steps there's going to be, but the second to last step would be automating. Okay, and then I would work back from there. Maybe if I took another step back, that would be really having the strong, it would be a little bit less about any tangible thing to set up in my finances and much more about tracking and analyzing and adjusting behavior. Because I know that that would be the last thing that I would need to get right before I could go into automating. But that's also the thing that anything before that I could set into place, but then I need to make sure that my behavioral change is the appropriate thing. So you can just see how I'm thinking through this. And a lot of times when you do the work on understanding your niche, it makes it so much easier to go through and use your own experience, your own expertise, but also being able to use, the pain points and the struggles that your niche is currently facing. And you can basically co-create what this overarching framework is going to look like. So I would continue going backwards until I got to step one, right? And then whatever is before step one is just that point A, where they're currently at. So what is that first step that they need to take, and then build it out? And again, you're not going to know how many steps are in your framework until you're done. And then you might rework it and you might go, oh, I have 17 steps here, and that's probably a little much. Maybe some of these they can fall under a bigger umbrella in my framework process. By the end, you'll have anywhere from 3 to, let's say, 10 steps. And whatever ends up for you after you've done a big review, after maybe you've cleaned it up a little bit, that's going to be your framework. And here's the other deal. your starting framework is not going to be your ending framework. So done is better than perfect. You gotta start. You gotta take the next step before you can really decide if it's going to work or not. So be willing to come to a decision about like, okay, this is it. This is what we're gonna work with. If it's not the right thing, I'm going to be willing to go back and change it. I can help my clients adjust if they need to. And a lot of times you're not even really going to know how your framework works until you start working with clients. And then those early day clients, you can just let them know, hey, this is a beta round of this program, of this framework. And if it needs adjusting, I thank you for being part of this process. You're going to get the most personalized experience here because I'm going to adjust it to your needs and your standards. So what a treat. So your framework, though, that's how you determine the steps. So you got to know your ideal client. And then step 2 is to determine those steps by knowing what point A is, what point B is, and then do as I like to do, work backwards. It just makes it really easy to know what the steps have to be because you can know, okay, well, in order to get here, this has to happen. And in order to get there, this other thing has to happen. So you can easily work backwards instead of taking too big of steps forward or skipping over a step. The third step in building your framework, this is my how to build a framework. The third step is basically to name your framework, right? So now that you've identified those steps, those are the steps. Those are the chapters to your book. Those are the outlines to your research paper. Those are the steps or the phases or the modules of your program. So now all you have to do is name it, which is is it the hardest part or is it the easiest part? It's definitely not easy. And a lot of people get way too in their head about naming their framework. And we do a lot of work on this inside of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint to help you get a name that is clear and that articulates what your clients want, but isn't too fancy or doesn't require you to think about it for 17 months because that is just a waste of time. Again, you can always change the name of your program, of your framework, whatever you want to do. So don't let this be the hang-up point. So some examples, just to give you an idea, could be the 3-step saving strategy or a 6-month moneymakers method or an 8-phase Wealthy Coach Blueprint, right? And then earlier we had the 6-step moneymakers method, but I changed it to 6-month moneymakers method just to give you a little bit of change, and I added in a little bit of alliteration. Alliteration isn't required, and definitely don't get hung up on making all of the words start with the same letter, but if you want to, if it comes easily, if it just clicks, then go ahead and put it in. But you're way better off being clear and not clever, because that's where you get stuck, okay? So now that you have your framework and you named it, this is going to allow you to be the founder of something that you have created that is perfectly suited to help solve your ideal client's biggest problems and help them achieve their goals. How amazing is that? How does that feel? How does that help you elevate the value that you feel your coaching provides, but also elevate the value of what your clients are going to be purchasing when they choose to invest with you? So by naming your framework, by creating your framework, then by naming it, then by taking it out there and selling it, you've taken money coaching, quote unquote, money coaching, something that can tend to be a little bit hard to grasp and tend to be difficult for people to understand the value that they're going to get from purchasing 6 hours of your time, right? That's what most people are selling these days. There's like a bundle of sessions or a bundle of number of hours, or maybe just like they sell it as a weekly coaching package, right? You're taking that is pretty intangible. It's hard to understand the value from it. And you're turning it into this tangible step-by-step framework that your client will be able to visualize themselves going through each step and getting the full support and the homework that they need to do in order to make progress towards their goals. And for them to really feel and understand the value that they're getting from purchasing that. So when you focus on selling your framework as the main part of your program, you're no longer putting a focus on selling your hours. You're selling the transformation that your client is going to go through. You're selling that story. You're selling the start to finish chapters in that book. And it's not even just about the chapters, it's about the full story of where they're going to be at the end of it, and being able to recognize where they are at the beginning and knowing that's not where they want to be anymore. So this process, implementing a framework, going through and determining what it is, and then naming it, and then talking about it when you go out and you market and you sell your program, this will immediately elevate the perceived value of your program to your potential clients and make it so much easier for you to sell. And for you, it will make your life as a coach so much easier to deliver your coaching. Know where you're at when working with your client and help you know exactly what you need to prepare, to talk about, and to expect for each of your coaching sessions. And it'll just bring you so much confidence as well when it comes to not only coaching, but also building this thing that happens to be a business. So, hope that was helpful. I would love to see what frameworks you create inside of your money coaching business. Go ahead and send it to me. If you need help with the naming, I'd love to chat with you about it. Let's do it on Instagram. That's where I hang out a majority of my time. I'm at Tess_Wicks. That's TESS_WICKS on Instagram. And you can just send me a DM and say, hey, just listen to episode 195. I want to send you my framework that I worked on as a result of that episode, and I'd love to see it. So send that to me. If you want to get at the show notes of this week's episode, you can head to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 195. And if you're ready to build your booked out life-changing coaching program and business, I invite you. We're 4 days away from opening enrollment to the Wealthy Coach Blueprint for the winter 2021 season, session, whatever you want to call it. Enrollment goes from November 30th to December 22nd. That's when my calendar is wide open for you to book a free strategy session where we're going to answer all your questions, talk about the blueprint, talk about your business, see if it's a good fit, talk about pricing, logistics, start date, your team, what that looks like. And then in early January, I believe it's January 4th, but I should really check my calendar. The first Monday of the full week of January, you're going to get access to the Wealthy Coach Blueprint, and we will kick things off for an amazing 3 months of business building, ideal client specifying, program structuring, marketing and sales bootcamp, and all those good things. So head to wanderwealthy.com/apply. Like I said at the top of the episode, you will either be prompted to sign up for the waitlist, and then you'll get early access to my calendar, or you might be ready to book your spot. And by all means, do it. Do not wait. This is a first come, first serve program, and I want to make sure that you get in if now is your time. And if you're not sure if now is your time, book a call anyway. It's so good for me to know who could potentially be interested in it, even if it's not until next summer, or even if now isn't the right time, whatever it looks like. I want to talk with you, and I want to see, what we can do, how we can make it work, or if I can expect to work with you in the future. And that'll be such a treat as well. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. Thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.